We have Zack Polanski, leadership candidate for the Green Party, joining us today. It's a pleasure to see you, Zack. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm loving the energy.
Always. We're speaking to a potential Green Party leader here. This is an exciting day. So just go straight in here. What is the point of the Green Party?
Point of the Green Party is to win elections to transform the country. It's to make sure that we're bringing in a wealth tax to tax multimillionaires and billionaires, that we're nationalising our water companies, that we're speaking out and standing against the genocide in Gaza and certainly the government's selling of weapons to a genocidal regime. The point of the Green Party is to win the arguments all over media and social media, to be there pushing what's called the Overton window. So that's kind of a window of acceptable discourse, making sure that we're pushing it in a place that is better for the poorest people in this country, which benefits everyone. And the point of the Green Party is to have a great time challenging the Labour government and taking the fight to reform.
Are you winning the argument?
It depends which argument. I think there's lots of arguments that we're winning. I'd like to think that no matter how grim and despairing a lot of British politics is right now, it would be a lot worse if we didn't have a strong left, if there wasn't the threat of a rising Green Party and certainly other groups that I'm sure we'll get onto. I think we're winning the argument in terms of the Labour government know that they can't continue doing this forever. The problem we have is that Keir Starmer right now is more worried about the Reform Party than he is about the Green Party. If I'm honest, I don't think he thinks about the Green Party hardly at all. So we've got a government that is being pulled constantly to the right. And that's why I'm running to be leader of the Green Party, because I think, or I know, with bold leadership, with stronger comms, with a clearer message, we can make sure that this Labour government is more worried about losing votes and seats to the Green Party than to Reform. And that's how you win the argument, is through electoral maths. Ultimately, the government starts to go, we can't keep appealing to the worst kind of instincts of the far right in this country. We can't just put out casually racist statements and hope that's going to win us some seats. We actually need to do things. We actually need to govern. That's the first stage of it. And then the second stage, obviously, is then a Green government. And you win the arguments there by making sure that everyone knows that the Green Party will reduce your bills, that we will create more fairness in society, and it will do things like protect the NHS.
Sorry, Zack, you just said a Green government. Is that a genuine? Do you mean a Green as a minority part of a coalition?
No, I mean a Green government. I'm not doing this interview or this kind of whole exercise for the good of it. I'm not suggesting that there's going to be a Green government round the corner, but certainly in a few parliamentary sessions time, I'd like to see a Green government. This is the whole point of this: is to first of all to win the argument, to hold governments to account, and then to hold power. And this isn't realistic at all. It's happened all over the world. There have been Green governments. In fact, we had a Green government pretty near to us. In Scotland, there was a coalition government with the SNP. What I would caution us on, and that's why we've got to get it right now, and I'm not talking about the Scots here, I'm talking more generally, is that we've seen times when Greens get into government and then they lose their values or their principles because it just becomes about electoralism. There is a tightrope to walk that I'm absolutely convinced we can walk between working to gain power, working to be acceptable within the parliamentary system, but also never losing your radical edge, never losing the fact that you got there because you were representing communities, you were speaking truth to power, and always holding wealth and power to account. I'm absolutely convinced we can do that. More than convinced we can do it. It's the only thing we should and must do.
All those things you said sound like they could be said by a leadership candidate for the Reform Party. Being radical, being different, electoral success. They have 1.3 million TikTok followers, where the Greens have 70,000. They've got 4 times the membership. So when they're talking about representing communities, surely we can look at them and say they are representing communities in a way the Greens aren't.
So first of all, I think Reform could say a lot of this, and it's no secret that I have seen Nigel Farage. Everyone's seen Nigel Farage, whether you want to or not. And gone, there are some lessons to learn there. Now, I really reject Nigel Farage's politics and everything he stands for. But ultimately, what he's doing is dabbling in lies and misinformation. We must never do that. But then he's telling a powerful story. He's cutting through. Far too often on the left, We start with facts, information, spreadsheets, graphs. That's a good place to start. You want to start with the objective evidence. But then we forget or don't tell a powerful emotive story. And it's really important we do that storytelling. On the question more directly, though, I think the other biggest difference is Reform have taken £2.3 million in donations. That's 95% of their donations from oil and gas companies and fossil fuel deniers. So when you hear them say that going to net zero or tackling the climate crisis will affect you in your pocket, will affect you in their bills, one, they're lying, and two, it's really clear why they're lying. They are being paid to lie. So another important point of the Green Party is that we don't accept big money we certainly don't accept them from oil and gas companies, but huge corporations. We don't have vested interests. Our vested interests are people and planet. So we're funded by small donations. But what we need to do is grow our mass appeal so we can have more and more of those small donations and a bigger and bigger membership.
Thank you. I mean, let's move on a moment, because if we go back in time, in 2015, under Ed Miliband, when Labour was the Miliband leadership, the Green Party was doing pretty well, 7% roughly in the polls. And then in came Corbyn as the Labour leader, and the Green Party disappeared, like 1 to 3% in the polls. And now they are breathing life again. And we had a poll yesterday that had you at like 8, 9, 10, 11% in the polls. Corbyn, you were talking about storytelling. Jeremy Corbyn is a storyteller. Zara Sultana is a storyteller. And your party is going to squeeze the Greens again to 1, 2%, right?
No, absolutely not. So first of all, Jeremy and Zara are storytellers, and I have a lot of time for them, both personally and politically. And so I think what we need to meet with this moment is a different kind of politics. Now, this demonstrates why Keir Starmer is doing so badly, both through the two-child benefit cap, through the disability cuts, that not only are the Green Party surging to the left of him, a whole party that hasn't even been set up yet is potentially surging, with over, I think, 700,000 signups at this point. So I think there's a few lessons there. First of all, as a Green Party, we have to reflect why are those people who have signed up not instantly signed up to the Green Party. And I really believe that's not about policy. Mm-hmm. I'd say our policies are pretty radical, and in some ways, maybe even to the left of where Jeremy and Zara might be. But, we'll have to wait and see where the policies actually land. But the more important thing is that we've not communicated those. So again, it comes back to communication. We need that bold leadership and to communicate better. But second, what I would say is we're the party with over 800 councillors, with 4 MPs. We got nearly 2 million votes in the last election, 39 second place seats, where we're clearly the best place to win those seats next time. Mm-hmm. And crucially, we've got a leadership contest where we're having these conversations. So what I want to see at the next election is not 2 left-wing parties kind of fighting the same seats. That would clearly be a disaster when Farage and fascism is at our door, both with this Labour government who are appeasing them and literally the full-fat version with Farage. So we've got to find ways to work together. What that looks like, I'm being non-specific, but I'm doing that deliberately because it's a democratic process. It'll be up to our membership to decide what does that relationship look like. And of course, when Jeremy and Zara finally get this thing off the ground, it will be up to their membership to decide what that relationship looks like. I don't think that's evasive. I think that's exciting. That's true democracy. That's 2 different bodies of people who largely agree, I'd imagine, on most things, saying, what do we want this relationship to look like? What's the best outcome for this? And I'm not absolving myself of responsibility in that. Leadership requires me to have an opinion and to guide that process through the things I say, but ultimately it'll be up to members to vote.
So some kind of agreement, some kind of 2 left-wing parties, some kind of agreement. Jeremy Corbyn is one of the biggest names in politics in the UK. Zara Sultana has one of the largest social media followings of any politician in the UK. They will probably, if they take all of the Jeremy Corbyn's independent group into the party, they will have way more MPs than the Green Party. So if this is to be some kind of arrangement, I understand you don't want to commit to what that might be, and for very good reasons. Aren't the Greens inevitably going to be the junior partner here?
I want to resist this conversation about junior and senior partners because I think I'm talking about a new politics, and I don't want to get straight back into the kind of competitive politics of the past. And I can understand how that's more attractive in terms of a conversation. But what I would say, so I'm actually answering your question, is when you walk down the street, 1 in 10 people are saying that they're going to vote for the Green Party. And we know in reality it might be many, many more. But do they get 1 in 10 of the media coverage. Very rarely do we. Now, there's two things we can do there. One, we can moan about it, and I'm certainly happy to do my fair share of that. But second, I know moaning about it is not going to change anything. We cannot expect establishment media, many of whom are paid for by the same donors who are part of those oil and gas companies. So, of course, they don't want to platform the Green Party more. And actually, what we've got to do is get bolder with our communications and cut through more. Now, of course, Jeremy and Zara are already doing that, and they need to do it more too. I don't think they're there, by the way. I don't think they'd find that rude. I think they'd agree that actually they're not winning the full argument either, because clearly we wouldn't have this awful Labour government doing the things we did. So I think this is about us all raising our game, all taking this moment to go, well, here's some friendly competition. It doesn't matter who's junior, who's senior. I am sick of going, I
Mhm.
was on Newsnight last night. I've been on lots of media recently where I'm the one person in the room making the left wing, or what I would just say is the common sense argument. I want to see a diversity of messengers. And if that means there are more people on the left making these arguments, whether they're in the Green Party or elsewhere, I just think that's better for our politics.
Thank you. We haven't got that much time left. I will put to you again, calling your policies common sense is what the right do as well. So it's hard to really capture what common sense might be if everyone's claiming it's on their side. And
Yeah,
that's
so
not
here's the
really a
thing.
question, it's more a point.
Well, no, but I do want to
So
respond
go
to
on.
it. So I'm reading a book at the moment about Tony Benn, and it's excellent. And it's
Hmm.
so clear to me how much Farage had obviously studied Tony Benn, because he just litters his speeches and his communications with very left-coded ideas. We know that literally with the nationalisation of steel when he got to Scunthorpe. But just generally, a lot of the populism that he evokes is the people versus the elites, the 99% versus the 1%. The big problem is Nigel Farage is literally representing the 1% and doing everything he can to protect the 1%.
Sure.
So we've got a man here who is a millionaire pretending to serve the working class, but actually serving the billionaires. Now we've got a choice, everyone else, and I'm talking about the left, but more generally, we can either cede
Hmm.
that ground and say, you know what, Nigel Farage is the patriot because he says he is, and he's the populist because he says he is. Or we have to play him at his own game and be much better at it because we own that in the first place, or we were the ones where the tradition comes from of the first place because it's actually accurate. We don't have to lie. Farage is saying it, but he's lying out of his teeth, so we've got to expose that. But on the left, we really are looking to represent the 99%. I want to uplift the voices of working class people, people living precarious lives, shop owners, small business owners, self employed people. All of these people make up a mass of people that can take on wealth and power in this country. And we shouldn't lose the language just because the right have stolen it. We should self reflect and go, why did we allow such a big gap that they were able to step into it? But we are where we are right now, and we've got to reclaim patriotism and reclaim populism.
So how do you? I'm trying to move on, but you're being so interesting. How do you feel about when you see a St George's flag? You want to lead the Green Party of England and Wales. How does the St George's flag make you feel?
Yeah, so I think the mistake is when people have condemned people for flying the St. George's flag. I think that's exactly when people who aren't racist but consider themselves patriots go, I can't do what I want to do in my own country. Now, it's important to say that, as far as I know, no one was trying to take St. George's flags down for any anti-patriotic reason. It was to do with planning law, but that's a different conversation that's boring but is also necessary. But to answer your question, how do I feel about it? I think it depends on context. During England football games, I paint my face in the St. George's flag. I wave a St.
Yeah, yeah,
George's
yeah.
flag outside my house. I wouldn't do that outside a football tournament. It doesn't mean people can't. And I think if people want to do that, let them get away with it. But let's be real. St. George's flags are being used to intimidate migrants and intimidate people of colour or anyone who feels like a minority. That's not acceptable. But again, I don't think we make it acceptable by telling people they can't fly the flag. I think we make it acceptable by reclaiming the flag, by reclaiming those narratives. We have to come to grips with this country about a conversation around empire and colonialism, which is going to be a very difficult conversation. But the more we pretend it didn't happen and everything's okay, the more we don't actually have the honest conversation we need to have. I'm not talking about beating ourselves up about what happened. I'm talking about everyone here, but I'm talking about honest reconciliation and looking about what a future looks like. That can't be done through facts and statistics. It's going to have to be an emotive storytelling conversation that places minority groups at the center of that conversation, along with white working class communities or any working class communities, because everyone's voice is important.
You're talking a lot about story, and it's really interesting. That's clearly a message of your campaign. But here's a story: the best way to hold the government to account is to be in the House of Commons, telling your story in the House of Commons, being a leader of a party at PMQs, the leaders get called more often, so you get much more opportunity. Leading the party at PMQs, being in there when the Department of Work and Pensions are laying out disability changes. That's where the story is told. You're not in there. How can you lead a party when you're not in there?
It's a nice try of an argument. In fact, you even sound like my competitors who've tried this argument to death. But I think the real reason is I think the real answer is no one really cares. I think people want a bold communicator, someone who can cut through. Now, sure, having a platform in Parliament is a platform, and it's an important platform. And I worked really hard, as so did thousands of members, to get our MPs there. I'm glad they're there, and I want to see more MPs. But it's absolutely not the be all and end all. And actually, without letting him dominate this entire conversation, although I partly am letting him, Nigel Farage achieved so much more outside of Parliament than he's even achieving inside Parliament. I think Brexit was one of the most catastrophic disasters this country has ever been through. And I think we're still facing the consequences. But it is undeniable that it was one of the biggest transformations this country's had, and certainly the biggest conversation we've had in our lifetimes. Nigel Farage, along with the billionaire media, pretty much single-handedly pushed that conversation 4 years outside of Parliament and made the change happen. Now, I'm not looking to make transformative, catastrophic change, you'd be pleased to know. But what I am looking to do is amplify the voices of communities, of people across England and Wales, the voices that we very rarely hear of. And when I talk about bold leadership, it's not just my leadership, it's their leadership too. So those people in those communities who are working so hard, who don't engage with politics because they think or they know it's broken or that it's in some ways a dirty thing. What we need to do is have people who are partly in the political system, which is certainly me. I'm elected in the London Assembly. I've chaired the Fire Committee and the Environment Committee for the last few years. I'm not someone without elected office experience, but to go to those places and know they're more important than any elected chamber, because actually what you need to be doing is listening to them, experiencing things with them, and then speaking with them, not for them, and then challenging power. I want to go to our MPs and say, did you know this is happening? This is what's happening, connect them, and then they speak out against the Prime Minister or whoever the minister is. That's a beautiful process of bottom up, bottom grassroots power, and that's exactly what the Green Party is.